Hello, welcome to In the Pink, the podcast with me, Natalie Pinkham. I've been away for a while. Well, only from you guys. I have been busy working at Sky Sports and actually busy lining up interviews for In the Pink. So there's loads coming your way in this next series. The first of which is from Daniel Ricciardo, because I caught up with him at the end of last season, before Christmas, just to hear his thoughts on what was a massive career decision to leave Red Bull and go to Renault for 2019 and beyond. So hear his thoughts on that. And then I've also spoken to Kirsty Gallagher, who's a great person, and she's been through a lot. She talks really openly, candidly about the stress and anxiety, and ultimately bereavement in a way of the breakdown of her marriage and the journey she's been on since, and her career, which has gone from strength to strength, and all the exciting challenges that are coming her way in 2019. And yeah, she's got some cool things in the pipeline, so that's great. Kenton Cool is another guest. Now, he is incredible. He has the British record for summiting Everest 13 times. Ridiculous human being. Find out what makes him tick on an upcoming In the Pink podcast. And another person I really want to tell you about is a guy called Carl Locco. Now, he is so compelling to listen to because he used to be in a gang in Brixton. He's been shot at more times than he's had birthday parties. He calls himself the man who should be dead, and yet he isn't, and he's using his life to great effect now. He's turned things round. He advises on how to deal with knife crime, and he helps kids get off the street, out of crime, and to channel their aggression, adrenaline, energy in a positive way. He's so interesting, so I really hope you enjoy that one. So that's just a flavour of some of the podcasts coming your way over the next few weeks. Send me your feedback, let me know what you think. But for now, sit back, relax, enjoy the biggest smile in F1, Mr. Daniel Ricciardo. So here we are, Daniel, a year on from our first podcast. Not just our first podcast, my first ever podcast, your first ever podcast. You've done many more since, I'm sure.
Not really, actually.
No? You did a couple, though. They were quite good. Enjoyed them.
Yeah, that's all right. Your one was the best.
Yeah, of course it was. And here we are after what has been an interesting year, to say the least. Plenty of highs, probably more lows. And it's strange to think, because had we had the podcast after Monaco, you'd have been saying your season was going stormingly well and it all was good in the hood. And then everything seemed to unravel. Now, listen, I've heard you don't watch the news. Is that true?
Yes. Where are you going with this?
Well, why don't? Well, I want to know why. Why don't you watch the news?
I never find it positive. It's just always, whether it's reality or not, I'm not sure, but it's always feels just negative. And I feel if people start the day watching the news, then it's not the best way to start your day. No, it's putting it simply.
So what I'm going to do then is get you to apply the news to your season. So I'm going to get you to talk about the headlines of your season.
It'll be a lot like the news that we see on TV. Very, very depressing.
I think the first headline has... the standout headline has obviously got to be you leaving Red Bull. We'll go through the races soon, but you've talked about your reasons behind that. Do they remain the same as when you first made the decision? But on reflection, has anything changed? How do you feel about the decision?
I guess that is certainly the biggest headline for now, or was, through the season. As far as news goes, yeah. It was the most, it had the biggest impact, I guess, on my kind of career, but also in F1, and the ripple effect that had with other drivers and teams and what was doing what. So, I would say it all still stands as it was. I guess the simple thing in a way was I felt like I needed change. And there's obviously reasons all behind that, but it wasn't really, I wouldn't say there was one massive, necessarily like a tipping point or a catalyst, if that's the word. I like that word.
Yeah, it's a good word.
I think I know what it means, but I like it.
Did you just learn it?
Well, no, it was actually one of my favorite albums as a kid. It was a punk band I liked, and the album was called Catalyst, and I never knew what Catalyst meant, but it was a good album, and then I figured out what it meant, I think. Anyway, where were we? News. Yeah, so
you didn't have a catalyst, not even Baku, because that seemed to be a flashpoint.
as I said, there was certainly moments along the way which was like, is it time, basically, to make a change? And there was the Baku weekend, so Azerbaijan, that whole race and the incident and everything was it was kind of weird, I guess, at the time. And then, there was just, I guess, a few things here and there. But honestly, there wasn't, I'm not going to say like, look, this is what happened behind closed doors and I left saying, screw this, I'm leaving. Like, there wasn't actually a moment like that. But it was lots of little things, but probably more than anything. Like, there's a few things, I guess, changing around me and around my life, I guess, at the moment. And I felt like this was... I'm 30 next year, and I don't want to like put the age as a thing, but like I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel it's the right time to create this new chapter in a way and evolve into, a young man into, maybe a man.
That's deep.
That makes sense. So I know that probably doesn't make sense to many people, but it's probably the best, not the best way of explaining it, but it's one way of explaining it.
In a way, is it a case of you taking charge of your own destiny, whereas when you were at Red Bull, you felt like things were being controlled for you? Not necessarily by anyone's intention, but various circumstances meant your career and life was going in a certain direction, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the system, and it does work, and I guess it works for so long. Once you get the contract and all that, it's like a junior driver, they kind of, in a way, manage everything, and you get the results, and they keep putting you, where you want to be, but also where they want to put you. But normally it's where you want to be, if that makes sense. So, eventually I got to the top team, and I spent 5 years there, and that was off the back of 4 straight world titles. So if you would have asked me back then as well, if I do, like, looking ahead at time, like in 5 years, would you have a world title with Red Bull Racing? I would have said, of course. Like, I don't doubt that at all. Obviously, it didn't happen. So, again, not the reason why I'm leaving, but I just feel like it was, I was always a little bit under, it was always in a way under their conditions. And I guess this was now a chance. It was my first time really out of contract, and I don't want to say to break free. That's probably too dramatic, because it wasn't like I was shackled down. I did enjoy, all the years at Red Bull, but it was a chance to, I guess, have the ability to create more for myself, on and off the track.
And give us a sense of the workings at Red Bull. Who is your kind of number one boss you report into? Is it Christian Horner? Is it Helmut Marko? And what's the dynamic like between those two?
I would say it's both. I guess normally from like a driver, I guess in a way more from like a contract point of view and those sort of discussions, it was probably more Helmut, but then more from like a team point of view and getting an understanding of what's happening in the team, I guess, and how the I guess whether it's development going, or how's this person doing, or I don't know, what's the plans for this race as far as, I don't know, just I guess on a kind of bigger scale, it was Christian. And I guess also if I had probably any concerns with anything, I'd say I'd probably go to both, but maybe more so Christian. So I guess he was, I guess, in the way, like, acted as team principal, but it's also like a team manager, so manages everyone's...
More to day-to-day runnings.
Yeah.
And who's the boss of whom?
For me, or...
Yeah, who's more senior? In the eyes of the drivers, who's more senior?
It's a good question. I kind of saw them as obviously both senior. I never, as I said, probably with like dealing with my contracts, I would go to Helmut, but then dealing with team stuff and maybe personnel, I would deal with Christian. So I don't know. I think they both work pretty well together. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that.
I should probably ask them. Yeah, well, they might not be. I know, because Christian was certainly pretty, not just surprised, but pretty devastated. And actually, once it's sunk in, I know from talking to a lot of the team, they're all gutted that you're leaving. They're like, oh, this is actually real. This is actually happening. It's like the girlfriend-boyfriend breakup. You went, nah, but we'll get back together. You know, you always go back for a revisit, maybe. Is that just me? No, I'm joking. In case my husband's listening.
I don't get people that do that, actually.
No, that is a bit weird.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to do it. But anyway.
You never have?
No.
Oh, okay. No. Good.
I kind of feel like if it's obviously like a serious relationship, like I feel if you break up, you break up. Yeah. But
men compartmentalize, though. I think men can just go, that's done, move on. Anyway, we're getting far too personal already. But Christian was definitely pretty gutted, and I'm sure still is.
Yeah, like it was. Yeah, it was. I certainly saw it. I mean, I knew like the team were always good to me in terms of, you know, relationships, and you know, I'm a pretty easygoing person and pretty positive, and I would say I'm relatively easy to like, and for sure maybe some people don't like me, but I don't know, I don't do too much which makes people maybe hate me, if you know what I mean. So I get on with a lot of people, and yeah, so I guess the effect once I announced I was leaving, again, I knew people cared, but I saw maybe that, oh, like, wow, they really care. So, and that's just, I guess that's just how it is. But again, I never doubted it, but, yeah, look, in a way it was nice for me to see that. And it was nice to know that, you know, my presence was, I guess, what's the word I'm after? Appreciated. That's what
was that part of the problem before? Did you not feel appreciated enough?
No, I mean, answering it simply, no. I mean, when I say no, I did feel appreciated. It's not that I wasn't. So, but yeah, I don't know.
So you didn't ever feel taken for granted? Do you think they always just assumed you'd always be there and you were just part of the fabric of Red Bull? Because certainly a lot of the fans felt like that. It's like, well, Red Bull isn't the same without Daniel, and Daniel isn't the same without Red Bull.
Yeah. Look, as far as when you say take for granted, or I think my personality draws some of that in terms of, but that's not necessarily, now we're talking about contracts or that. It's more just just, I don't know, appearances or whatever. It's like,
you're yes man. Yeah, Daniel will do it
because he's happy to do it, and he's smiling and whatever. I mean, some things maybe it was like, oh, like, should I really be doing this, you know, the evening before a race or something like that. But again, that's probably just because I'm not an arsehole. Maybe I'll turn into one.
Oh my God, what has Renault done to this man? You certainly think a lot. You certainly analyse and think and process. Do you think you probably overthought this process? And was it therefore a massive relief when you finally did make that decision, when you got off your flight to the States? And has there ever been a regret? Have you looked in the mirror and gone, oh, I made the wrong decision?
I haven't had any regrets. Definitely I felt comfortable with it and at peace with the decision. So I certainly, you know, fortunately on track I'm decisive, but off track I've never been good with like just anything, like, oh, like if I'm with my friends, oh, where should we go for dinner tonight, or what time should we meet, or it's always well, this and then that. I'm just hopeless. So
but why is that? Why have you got this alter ego where you can be, as you say, ruthless, decisive, everything that you need to be a decent driver, overtaker? Like there's never any indecision on when you plunge for that overtake.
Yeah, fortunately. So I don't know. I really don't know, but I mean, Again, I think because it was kind of new territory for me, you know, having a being out of contract and having, let's say, options for the first time in my career. I wanted to, in a way, overthink it to make sure I made the right decision. But yeah, I mean, looking back on it now, could the process have been more fluent? And I guess so. But you know, part of that is learning and growing and. Yeah, in a way I don't want to say I made mistakes, but in a way, yeah, mistakes are made so that you can become better, I guess.
I mean, you say you had options, but actually some of those were taken away from you. Were you pretty surprised and disappointed that Ferrari, Mercedes didn't come in for you? Because you were doing all the right things, and you certainly tick a lot of boxes when it comes to marketing, and you've obviously got an Italian passport, so I would have thought you were a perfect fit at Ferrari. And also Merc, I think a lot of people out there would have thought you were a great partnership with Lewis. Was it therefore frustrating that they didn't come in?
Yeah, I guess to answer it bluntly, because at the end of the day, I know, in the next, even if you just want to, the next 12 months, I still think, and everyone could say this, that Mercedes and Ferrari are going to be the team to beat. Could be longer than that, but I think it's probably a safe bet to say the next 12 months. So, and maybe other teams will take a win here and there, but I think, they're still the team to be with short term. So, and especially like I did the first 6 races, won 2 out of 6. It was Seb, Lewis and me that had won two each. And it was like, at that stage, no one else was kind of touching us in a way. And I felt like my pool, so to speak, couldn't have been any higher. So in a way, I did expect probably more out of that. At the time, I think rightly so. But again, through this whole process, it's proven that, nothing is expected, guaranteed, or anything at this level. And there's always layers to it. And obviously, you mentioned Ferrari, and they signed Leclerc now, and he's a young up-and-coming prospect, and maybe that was part of their plan all along, regardless of what my results were, what his results were, who knows. And then with Mercedes, I guess the Mercedes one is probably a bit of a different situation in terms of, with what Ferrari's done. I see it and respect that, because I've seen Red Bull do it, bringing the young kids through the program. So, and
actually, it's one of the first times they have done it. It's like quite a change in tack for them.
Yeah, and in a way, I think it's about time in terms of it's worked for Red Bull. Seb was one, I was one, Max is one, and we've all won races, if not championships in Seb's case. So it's not like it hasn't worked. So that I obviously respect and understand. And I guess with the Merc one, it's a slightly different dynamic with, I guess, the path they've chosen. But in saying, as well, Lewis has won driver championship, teams won constructors championship. So in a way, they've ticked all the boxes they need. So
they're kind of like, keep the status quo. It's working. Yeah,
I guess for them, it's more conservative, but I can't argue because it's worked for them. So results, it's again, it is what it is, and I also don't know everything, and I don't want to act like I do. There's so much that goes on in this sport, and part of me chooses not to know everything because my head would probably explode. But yeah, that's, I guess, one way of understanding it.
How much of a say do you think Seb and Lewis had in this? Did they in some way maybe feel threatened by you coming in?
You'll have to ask them. Again, you never know. There's an argument for sure, and there's probably an argument to say, well, no, they're, two of the best drivers in the world. They're confident. They, believe they could beat anyone they go up against. But then obviously there's the argument that they're doing, well as it is. So why would they, why would they change it? But yeah, to be honest, I don't think they would have stopped it. Long story short, I think an organisation as big as Ferrari or Mercedes, if they want to do something, they'll do it. I know Seb and Lewis, I'm sure, have power, but not enough to say, guys, you're not going down this direction. Yeah.
It'd be so interesting to see how Seb gets on with a new teammate next year. There's no doubt Charles is a great bloke and a great driver, but you never know. He might bring out the best in Seb, and Seb might go and win the World Championship as a result. You just don't know. That's what I think is amazing about the team dynamics with the driver. And talking of that, you and Max, I know that so much is publicly said about your partnership, but actually behind the scenes it always sort of worked, didn't it? There's out on track there were certain dust ups, and he's got a different style to you, but when I spoke to him, when was it? Shortly after your decision, again, he was one that was genuinely gutted that you were going. Did that surprise you, or did you think, I hope he relieved that I'm out of his hair now?
No, I think, I guess on our relationship professional, not not personal, ladies and gentlemen. It's not what it is. Even if Red Bull do make some videos
that suggest otherwise. Yeah. That lederhosen. Oh.
Remember, I'll say they get you to do things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
No. So yeah. Look, in a way I was always relatively surprised how, I guess, well it worked as teammates, because we're both. I mean, everyone knows. He's obviously been vocal and said whatever about, on track, off track, whether it's about a driver or a team principal. So I guess everyone knows how, in a way, stubborn he is and driven and determined and I guess confident. But also, yeah, people that have been watching the last 5 years as well with me at Red Bull, they know that's the same. And there's definitely an air of confidence, and certainly not arrogance, but I think just a confidence and a belief, within ourselves, that I think is as strong as any other driver on the grid. So when you get that in the same team, pushing for, a win or a podium, it's naturally it can create a big division. But for whatever reason, it never really did. We had some on-track incidents, and sure, at times I wanted to grab him, and maybe he wanted to do the same with me. But I don't know, we were always just able to move on, and I can't explain why. I could be in a similar situation with another teammate, and maybe would clash, all season long. But I think from my side, I always feel like, maybe it takes a bit of time over the, a bit of maturity. But if Max beats me, sure, I don't like it. But if he's done it fair and square, then all I can do is respect that and shake his hand and try and learn from it. And I think that already having that kind of respect / understanding / maturity level is one part of the problem.
Do you think that he will change the more experience he gets?
One part of the problem.
One part of the solution.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
I knew that
one
you were going somewhere positive with that.
Yeah, not problem.
You meant the opposite of what you said.
To touch on that, I think, nearly every race driver is stubborn. I'm sure we all are in some way.
But he's quite vocal about it, yeah.
Yeah,
which
but
people
also
love as well. I mean, it's not a bad thing necessarily.
No, and it creates his personality. But in the term of, as I said, respecting someone if they do a better job, a lot of drivers, I feel, are too stubborn to acknowledge that they got beat or that they weren't as good that day or whatever. And then it's like, then you create excuses or whatever, and then you try and create some tension within the team. Oh, why didn't you give me that? When it was nothing ever in the first place. And I think that's when it can start. So, yeah. The stubbornness can, I guess, backfire if you use it the wrong way.
Is there any part of you, though, that wishes that you were more vocal? Because certainly Max and his dad have got such a presence in the paddock. Do you think that that's something that you've lacked, maybe, in the last couple of years?
I think, touching on, a little bit earlier how, I'm a nice person. It's a great thing for me, but sometimes it isn't. And I guess there was never an example of like on track where it was like, he got, a new front wing because he asked for it or demanded it. So I guess it never turned into anything like that. But I guess just in general, yeah, just being, probably just in a simple way of putting it, just learning to say no sometimes or having that attitude, I'm not saying that's probably not the best example, but, just having that thing about, that presence and like, no.
Yeah, or at least the perception that you would occasionally say no.
Yeah, and I would say it did change this year. Like again, the more time you spend in the sport, you see and understand a bit, and it's like, all right, well, this isn't working for me, so I need to change something. So yeah, I pushed back a few times, and I think even if I feel I'm being an arsehole, it's not really being an arsehole, because my version of arsehole is probably pretty normal, where obviously someone else's version that's a real arsehole.
We're going to bask in the glory of Monaco in a second, but let's just talk about it, what happened after it, because Monaco / your decision to leave was actually quite close together in terms of timing, because it was obviously end of May and then it was August by the time you chose to leave. And yet, if you'd asked you in Monaco or anyone whether you'd leave the team, you'd have gone, no way, Jose, I can't imagine it. But then everything did seem to unravel. So tell me how you took that. Was there a sense of you that was like, well, I've made the best decision here because look what's gone wrong? Or was there a sense of you that was like, well, that was always going to happen if I was leaving the team? Was there any kind of conspiracy theorist in you that was like, things are going wrong for me now because I've left the team? Or was it all just a horrible coincidence?
I mean, certainly I'd like to think it was a horrible coincidence. And at the time, I mean, as the season was going on, I was 100% thinking that. Because again, if I was thinking other things, then it wasn't going to help my cause. If I was filling my head with more stuff than I already had going on. So, and I mean, looking back on it now, I guess seeing the relationships I had within the team and trying to understand a little bit about the politics of F1 and all the rest of it, I don't see why it would have been anything else than, unfortunately, horrible coincidence. So, yeah, look, to put it simply, I don't see what, let's say, the team would have got out of me failing, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't look good on them as well. And actually, it creates stories like this and is there conspiracies and blah, blah, blah. So I don't think it does them any favours at all. So, I never... Obviously, you hear people murmur it and are they really doing this to you, Daniel? And I just tried not to really dwell on it or think about it. So
in a way, then,
I never really believed it, yeah.
In a way, then, did you take the positives from it and you go, right, well, I have made the right decision to leave?
I mean, yeah, but I guess that's, like obviously you have a failure week after week and it's just like, oh, like what am I doing here? And it's like, I'm so glad I'm leaving. But again, that's kind of just a short-term emotional response. It could happen at any team, but sure, it was frustrating having all the failures. But again, I feel like, my car crew and the guys that work directly on my car are some of probably the best I've ever worked with. Some of the turnarounds they did, China this year and a few things where they put the car back together in like miracle time. So I don't think they really made many errors over the course of my time with them. So I think a lot of it was just, I don't know. I still don't really know.
Well, there was a silver lining in getting pole, and that must have been very satisfying for you to just tuck that one in before the end of the year, because ultimately you have had criticism for not out-qualifying Max. You've arguably had better racecraft, but then quali's let you down. How satisfying was that, and how much did that sort of just give you a little spring in your step before the season was out?
Yeah, that was big. Even qualifying, like there was... And again, I'm not going to say that I didn't get beat this year in the on the Saturdays, but I guess there was times where it was, I felt like more things were going on, with my car and this and that, and a bit like Max was talking about in Mexico when, let's say, I got the pole.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, because it was for pole, I guess he was vocal, but there's been times where, there's been stuff like that on
what, he genuinely thought there was a bias towards you in Mexico? No,
he was saying he had some issues with the drivability and kind of engine mapping and stuff like this, which was affecting the balance. And there's been times where I've had it, but it wasn't for poles, so it wasn't vocal. And again, I don't want to say I'll get away from that because I don't want to come across sour or anything. But it's hard when everything runs perfect. Like it doesn't always run perfect from a mechanical point of view as well, I guess is what I'm saying. But Mexico, going to the positive of that and the pole lap, I mean, to be honest, reason why I celebrated kind of so much was, A, it had been a long time, since anything kind of good happened on track. And B, if you really want to know the truth, I knew that in 24 hours, what happened could have happened. So I was like, make the most of it while it shines.
What, you anticipated the DNF?
I just how the season's been, and I guess how race cars are. I knew that a win or a podium isn't guaranteed tomorrow, and so I was like, anything could happen tomorrow. And so I did hold some like celebration in, because at the end of the day, it is just pole. But part of me wanted to enjoy that moment because. Yeah, it hadn't come around often, and it could be taken away in 24 hours, which eventually it was. So, a few reasons why I was so happy on Saturday. And I was the underdog, in a way. Like Max, there was a bit of a Monaco weekend that I had that Max was having. Every session he was leading and topping the times, and then for me to do him, the only session of the weekend to do him in Q3 when it matters, that was like... I think if anything, it wasn't like because I was the underdog and it was awesome. It was more just showing, I guess, people that unfortunately start to doubt that, wow, when it's really the chips are against him and it's the highest pressure lap of the weekend, this kid's still able to pull it off. And it's like, I think that was bigger than the lap time itself.
So has that been an issue for you then? A concern that people have lost confidence in you in some way? Was that something that you were keen to prove before the season was out? Because you presumably have never doubted yourself, but you were worried that, at least from the outside, and certainly the history books won't look favourably on the last few months of your season.
Absolutely, yeah. And for sure, it's, again, Max had some great results, but also there is the kind of hype and everything around him, and then
he certainly got momentum. But it's crazy when you think about the first half of the season. People were saying if he was a Toro Rosso driver, he'd have been out of F1 by then, and he had a storming second half of the season. Do you think he was in any way buoyed by the fact you were leaving, that this was now his team?
Maybe. I think certainly, like, I know when Seb announced he was leaving, and I knew I was having a rookie teammate with Kvyat. Immediately I do shift to, I guess the word is responsibility. And now the team is going to lean on me because I'm the experienced guy. So they're going to rely on me to drive them at least for the next, short-term phase of the whatever. The whatever. It's real good. So, I think it's
been a long
natural.
season. I can forgive you for not being overly articulate.
It's natural that Max would have thought that and felt like there was more kind of responsibility on his shoulders. So
boosted by it,
Yeah, I guess. And for sure, like, I'm sure there were some people in the team that were like switched off from me and were like, we're all going for Max now. But again, I don't think that goes to the stuff in the car, but just from a feeling and a let's call it an energy point of view.
A Red Bull energy point of view. Okay, listen, to make this a good news day, because we want you to go off to your holidays back with your family in Australia with a spring in your step. Let's just reflect on Monaco for a couple of minutes to round off the podcast. Just how special was that? Because not only did you win the one that you've always wanted to win, but you did it under really difficult circumstances.
Yeah, I like this. We're ending on a good one. So Monaco was, it was the greatest achievement of my career to date, for sure. More enhanced by probably the reception I got when I got back from the podium and all that, back to the team, the energy station, as they call it at Red Bull. I'd never seen just a sea of people so, I really believe, like, so happy and excited for someone, and it was like, I really felt at that moment that how I go about it meant a lot to a lot of people, and that just made me proud, I guess. So that was certainly the proudest moment in my career.
It was literally like you'd won the World Championship, wasn't it, in that moment? It was
like, there's no other way of putting it. It was huge. Like, I felt like I'd done more than I'd actually done, than just winning a race. There was certainly something else behind it. And, it was huge. And I think as well, part of it was, 2 years ago, my name won't be on the winner's board, but, 99% of people believe that, that was my race, and rightly so. So I think they'd carried a bit of that heartbreak with them for the last, 24 months. And to do that and kind of get the monkey off the back, and with a race where we had problems, I think it was just a massive relief for everyone. And, I think their fear as well was that if my car did break down in that race, I probably would have walked away and just never come back. So just a massive relief for everyone. I mean, let's say losing Monaco twice would have been, the death of many of us.
Too much to bear. Okay, so now you've got Christmas with your family. A new member of the family has arrived. So this is going to be a time of celebration. How much are you looking forward to just putting your feet up?
Yeah, I am. You can probably hear it in my voice. It's been a long year. I'm certainly tired and ready to switch off. and it's, on track stuff is tiring, 21 races, all the rest of it. But as we've touched on a few things, there's plenty of off track business that goes on, which I guess just wears you down. I think like everyone, no matter what your job is, come December, come Christmas, you want to switch off for a little bit. And I've got not only a nephew but a little niece now, so just looking forward to having some real family time and getting some heat as well, getting some sun, so my throat doesn't sound so husky and cold and brittle like the English winter will do. So the year, I'll be honest, for the most part sucked, but I'm not bitter about it, and I feel like I'm going to learn and grow, and it's only a stepping stone to what's to come, and I believe that it'll create, a better story, come whatever day it is that I win a title.
We look forward to it. Thanks for your time.